Okay, today's date is March 18th, 2014. The time is approximately 10:16 hours. I'm Detective Jason Morales of the Albuquerque Police Department. Also present is Detective Matt Kaplan. And we're here speaking to you. Can you state your first and last name?
John Pilgrim.
And what's your home address?
2416 Tramway Terrace Court.
And what's your date of birth?
4/28/91.
And do you have a telephone number I could reach you at?
505-298-2236.
Is that a home phone number?
Yes.
Do you have a cell phone or anything like that?
Nope.
No. Okay. This is in reference to case number 14-023683, an incident that occurred on March 16th, 2014. Now, we had received some information that you witnessed what ended up later being an officer-involved shooting. Can you just kind of tell me what you saw and where you're at and just go through as much detail as you can?
My parents were having a barbecue in their backyard, and so I got there at around a little after 5. And my dad had told me that there was a guy being surrounded by police in the backyard, and so me and my family went to the back and we started watching it from our backyard. Well, I grabbed a pair of binoculars from my parents' house, and I was watching it through those, and I saw that what I couldn't tell from the distance if he was homeless or if he was just camping out in the foothills. But he was surrounded by regular police officers, police in what looked like tactical SWAT gear, and another form of police uniform I've never seen. And they had shotguns, a dog, what looked like M16s with scopes, and for the most part, it was more of a stalemate. He was just yelling the entire time, being profane. He kept waving around something shiny in his hands. I couldn't see it up close, but my guess was a knife because he kept yelling, I have the right to have knives, I have the right to have them out. And when he just kept yelling at the entire time. Later on, some more officers showed up, another guy in SWAT gear, and around the time, it just kept going on until around the time it started getting dark, around 6:45 or 7, and that's when, that's when they thought they should make their move since it was getting too dark. I was looking through the binoculars when at the base of his feet, I saw a flash of light, a puff of smoke, and then a loud bang, which my assumption was it was a flashbang grenade. And right when that went off, the officers near him moved forward and were telling him to get down on the ground. He didn't look responsive because he looked like he'd been stunned. And so they let the dog go. Then the dog moved forward a little bit, and he outstretched his right hand. And then the dog backed away, and then they were telling him more to get down on the ground, And when he didn't, that's when I heard 3 to 4 shots and saw little wisps of dust from the rock behind, where I think some of the shots that missed hit. After that, he slumped over to the side, and when they approached him and were looking at him, from my angle, he didn't look like he was responsive at all. He didn't look like he was moving. But the dog was attacking him for like 15 seconds until they pulled the dog off. And after that, it was getting a little too dark for the sea. The ambulances came, and they were just staying around there until then I went home around 7:30.
Okay. Let me just go back and ask you some questions. So you're at your parents' house, or you went over to your parents' house, they're having a barbecue, and then you got there about 5 o'clock.
Yeah, a little after 5.
Okay. Where is your parents' house? What's their address?
800 Oro Real. It's right next to Copper.
800 Oro Real, Northeast?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, and what are your parents' names?
Misty and Brian Pilgrim.
So you got there about 5 o'clock, and I'm assuming both your parents were there when you got there?
Yes.
And then who else was also there?
There was a woman named Jane and Chris. I don't remember their last names off the top of my head.
Are they married to each other?
Yes.
Okay. So it's just your mom, your dad, Jane and Chris, and yourself.
And my brother Derek Paris.
And that's it?
Yes, that was all that was there. And my grandma was there too.
Okay.
Came with me.
Your grandma that's here?
Yes.
And what's her name?
Ruth Pollard. She probably wouldn't have seen much. She's in her old age.
Okay. So you get over there for the barbecue about 5 o'clock, and was the police activity already going on before you got there?
Yes.
Okay, so when you got there, who told you?
My dad.
And what exactly did your dad tell you?
He said that they had surrounded some guy in there, and that he was saying that he was a camper and that he had an encampment farther up. And he had been running around the foothills. He didn't know much. He just saw that there was a guy surrounded there.
Well, how did your dad know that? What he told you about the camp?
Well, my dad runs a lot in the foothills, and he had seen campsites farther up.
So was he assuming that's what it was about, or that's what
he was assuming.
Oh, okay, but he didn't know that.
He didn't know that for sure.
Because he knew the area, that's what he was guessing.
Yeah.
Okay. So after he tells you that, then you start watching what's going on from your parents' backyard.
Yes.
And was your dad, your mom, Jane, Chris, Derek, and Ruth all in the backyard as well?
Yeah, they were watching it, and after a while, they went inside and lost interest while I kept watching it.
Okay, so at what point did they go back inside?
I'd have to say like 30 minutes after, so it'd be like around 5:45, maybe around 6.
And that's when everybody went back in?
Just I stayed outside with the binoculars.
Okay, well that's what I meant. So I'll clarify. So everybody else, with the exception of yourself, went back inside, and then you continue watching what was going on?
Yes.
Okay, so and correct me if I'm wrong, so when everything went down, when it finally came to its conclusion, the incident, you were the only one outside watching that?
Yeah, and once the bang went off, though, they came outside to hear what it was. It was very loud.
Okay. So from your parents' backyard to where the officers had this guy surrounded and were dealing with what was going on, what would you say the distance was?
It's hard to say. I would guess it at like 270 yards.
Okay. And does your parents' backyard back up to the foothills? Like, is there a yard behind there? I mean, I'm not familiar with that area.
No, it's right. There's a gate that goes directly into the foothills onto the path.
Okay, so there's no houses behind your parents' house?
No.
So wherever you're looking at, you can see directly at what's going on?
Yes.
Okay. So then you said you got there about 5 o'clock. Everybody kind of loses interest, give or take around 5:45.
Mm-hmm.
And then you stay out there. And prior to 5:45, had you already retrieved the binoculars that you're looking through?
Yeah, it was probably around like 5:30 that I retrieved the binoculars.
Okay. So you're looking through the binoculars and you're watching this thing as it goes on. As it's, let's just start from 5 to 5:45. Let's talk about that time frame. In that time frame, were you close enough to where you could hear what was either being said by the officers or what was said by the individual?
I couldn't hear from the officers, but I could hear the camper yelling.
And what was he yelling?
He just kept yelling. Most of it I couldn't understand. I could hear yelling, but I can hear about the knives and having the right to do this and that. Like the right to own them and the right to have them out. And then he just looked kind of threatening is all.
Okay, and he's yelling that at the officers?
Yes.
And you could hear that because he's yelling. So there's some stuff you could hear and you can make out, like about the knives. Mm-hmm. But then there's other stuff he's still yelling, but you just can't make out what he's saying.
Yes.
And then could you hear what the officers were saying to him?
No, I couldn't. They weren't talking loudly at all.
Okay. So from where you were at Can you describe what that individual looked like that you saw the officers talking to? Yeah.
He looked like he was in his early 30s. He was wearing a bandana like it was a hat, like it had around his head and it was tied in the back. In the beginning, he looked like he had like sweatpants, shoes, and a shirt, and then later on he put on a white jacket. And his hair was kind of long. I couldn't tell if he was homeless or not.
Okay. Was he black, white, Hispanic?
White, is from what I saw.
And is this anybody that you had ever seen before?
No.
You'd never seen this guy before?
Mm-mm.
Could you tell if he had any facial hair or anything like that?
I think he had a little bit of facial hair.
Like a beard, mustache, goatee? Could you tell? Or you just remember seeing that hair on his face? And it doesn't matter one way or the other. If you don't know, that's fine too.
I just remember the facial hair.
Okay. And then you said that you saw there's officers that were kind of surrounding him.
There was three below him.
Okay.
There's one up and to the right and one and down to the left. Then later on, one joined up and to the right, one joined with the three, and then there was just an officer hanging around, another officer hanging down to the left.
Okay, so there's, give or take, like 8 officers?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you first saw, well, let me ask you this. So this guy, and you said that he was above them. What do you, I know what you mean, but if somebody's listening to this that doesn't have any idea what happened.
He was up the hill more.
Okay.
He was up into, I guess you would say, more south, up south more, southeast more up the hill behind the boulder.
Okay. So then the officers, by the way you're describing, the officers, he's at a higher ground position and the officers are below him.
Yeah, there's 3 officers that were below him that were off lower down on a beaten path. Mm-hmm. And then west of the camper, there was an officer behind a boulder.
Okay, so from where you could see, were there officers completely surrounding him or just kind of like
a semicircle?
Semicircle. Okay.
There was no officers behind him that I could see.
Okay. And this is going to sound like a stupid question, but obviously it's for a reason. You've always referred to, as you're telling us a story, that you're referring to this guy as the camper and these guys as the officers. Why? What makes you think that they're police officers?
Because they had guns and there was police officer. I saw a police officer of Suburbans in the parking lot.
Okay, and then the guys that you saw, the officers that you saw contacting this individual and having a dialogue with him, can you just kind of describe any of them as you remember, like what they're wearing?
They were wearing green vests.
Okay.
That's all I remember seeing, green vests. I can't remember what they had. I think they had something written on the back of it. And there was one police officer that was to the west, and there was one up that was up the hill. They were in their black uniforms. Mm-hmm. And then another officer joined later on with the one on the west, and then 2 more SWAT guys looked like SWAT guys in tactical gear showed up later on.
Okay, so based on what you're telling me, is there any reason to believe that the average person or anybody would not know that those people talking to the camper, as you described them, were police officers? I
don't think they would have been able to tell.
Did you have any reason to believe that they were not police officers?
I had no reason to believe they were. I mean, they were there. I didn't know if there was some kind of special jurisdiction over there. All I saw were people with shotguns.
Okay. And then you said you saw there were some people, there's a couple officers there wearing like the black uniforms. Mm-hmm. And you said you saw some guys in like green vests. And then some guys that were wearing like tactical gear.
Yeah, like SWAT tactical gear with the helmets and the flashlights on the top.
Okay. And then I know at one point you also said that you saw, you said there was some officers carrying some rifles with scopes. And then
what looked like rifles with scopes.
Okay. Did you see anything else that was like, are you familiar with guns?
Yes.
So did you see anything else that looked like a long gun, whether it be a rifle, a shotgun, anything like that?
I thought I saw one of the officers that was down west. He looked like he had what looked like a rifle and a scope because he was on the rock like this.
Mm-hmm.
One of the SWAT guys that was up top, south up the hill, he had looked like some sort of a rifle, not like a rifle or an assault rifle with a scope.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure the other SWAT guy had some sort of assault rifle with him.
Okay. And I know also when you told us before I started asking you questions, you said that you saw there was a dog there?
Yes, there was a dog.
Okay. And again, it's going to sound like a dumb question, but I just want to make sure that we're completely clear. It wasn't just like a dog on the path. It was the dog that was with the police officer?
Yeah, it was with that group of police officers. There's one holding a leash, one holding him.
Okay. Okay, so let's move up past 7:45. So now your family is inside. They kind of lost interest. 5:45. About 5:45, your family goes inside. You stay out and you're watching. They kind of lost interest. You continue watching it. You can hear him yelling. That continues. And then you said, give or take around 6:45 or 7 is when that's when it kind of came to its conclusion.
Yes.
Okay, so let's just move up to that point. And what was the first thing that you remember that kind of precipitated what had happened, or made you think that where everything kind of started moving faster than it was?
Well, he grabbed his bag like he was just going to walk away.
And what do you mean he grabbed his bag?
Like he off to the side. I couldn't see this before until he grabbed them, but he had like 2 bags with him and like a satchel.
Okay.
And a gray sweater. He put on the gray sweater and he put on the satchel and he grabbed the 2 bags like he was just going to walk away, like nothing was wrong. And so he walked closer to the cops, like another 5 feet, and put down his bags. Then he like walked around a bit and back behind him, and we're still yelling. And then once he got back to where his bags was, that's when everything went down, and that's when I saw what I thought was a flashbang grenade go off.
Okay, so you said you saw a puff of smoke.
A flash of light in my binoculars first, and then I saw a white puff of smoke going from at the base of his feet, and then I heard the loud bang.
Okay, so the flash of light, did that come from a different spot? I mean, I'm pretty sure I know what you're describing. I just want to make sure. So was the flash of light from the flashbang, or was that from somewhere else?
That was from where the puff of smoke was.
Okay, so you see the light, see the puff of smoke, and then you hear the noise.
Yes.
And it all came from that same spot. So that's what made you think that was the flashbang.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the flashbang goes off, and then what happens?
The officers move forward and telling them to get down on the ground.
Could you hear that, or you're just assuming?
I was hearing them yelling it. They were yelling it.
And what were they saying?
They were get down on the ground, get down on the ground.
Okay.
He didn't look very responsive. He was just standing there still. And then that's when the dog jumped forward a little, and he outstretched his right hand like he was like trying to jab it with a knife. I didn't see any knife in his hand. All I saw was him outstretch his hand. And then the dog backed away, and they were telling him more to get down on the ground, get down on the ground. And he still wasn't responsive. He was just standing there. And then that's when I heard the shots getting fired.
Okay, so let's move back just a little bit. So when the dog goes up, could you tell, did the dog just run up? Could you tell if the dog was on a leash? Anything?
The dog wasn't on a leash.
Okay. So the dog ran up to him and he said, looked like he lunged at the dog. You didn't see anything in his hand, but it looked like...
Yeah, I just saw his hand outstretched.
Okay.
And then the dog backed away. And then they kept yelling more, get down on the ground.
And then you said he kind of just stood there like he didn't, maybe if he was stunned from the flashbang or something. And then after that, that's when you hear the gunshots.
Yes.
And how many gunshots do you think you heard?
3 to 4 of them. I couldn't tell you exactly, but that's around what I thought I heard.
Okay. And I know you said that you're familiar with guns. Were you able to tell, because obviously a handgun will have a different noise than a rifle or a shotgun. Mm-hmm. Could you tell, and I mean, what your experiences with guns, what had been fired?
I would say it would be some sort of assault rifle.
Okay. And you heard 3 to 4 shots.
Yes.
And out of those, when you heard those gunshots, do you know which one of those officers, or do you?
I think it was the guy with the SWAT gear, because the other two guys were carrying shotguns.
Okay. So the guy with the SWAT gear is the one that you think was fired. What about the officer that you saw with the dog?
I didn't get I don't think he was in my frame. I didn't see him have anything. I was just looking more at the guy.
Okay. So then the guy goes down. He's not moving, and then what do you see? What happens after that?
They get close to him. They surround him, and the dog was attacking him for like 15 seconds on his arm.
Mm-hmm.
On his arm or somewhere around here.
You're showing like on your left leg?
Yeah, like his arm was over here, and the dog was attacking somewhere around here.
Okay.
And it was just for like 15 seconds the dog was doing that, and then they pulled the dog off.
Okay. And then what happened?
Then it started getting a little too dark. I couldn't really see much. The ambulance came. All I saw were just flashlights being turned on and off over there. And I left after that once the ambulance came over there.
Okay. Can you do me a favor?
Mm-hmm.
And on this piece of paper, if you can you kind of just draw how everybody was situated and where you saw everything?
So we have this big rock formation. This isn't really the scale.
I was assuming because it's a little confusing now.
This is where the uniformed cop was over here. Earlier on over here, there was the other uniformed cop, but him and the SWAT guy moved over to Boulder closer. And so...
Well, can you, if you can label, this is an officer, label this what it is, and all these things, so,
Right. Uniformed cop. There was a SWAT guy. And a uniformed cop. And then later on, another uniformed cop showed up. And you had there's another boulder. And there's like a path. This is where the perp was. So we labeled perp. You had both the three. Well, earlier on the officers were down here, and they moved up when he wasn't looking to here. They're behind these boulders. The dog was right here. I can't draw. I never went.
I can't either.
And then later on, the SWAT guy went behind this big old bush to get over here to here. The other SWAT guy. So these were the green vest dudes. This was another SWAT guy who went around this bush. And boulder. All these other ones were boulders.
No, label that so they'll know that's the dog.
Dog.
Okay. And then can you just label which direction is north on here?
Get this way. North.
And then would you mind just signing your name and put today's date?
Today's the
18th. So from the time that the flashbang went off to hearing the 3 to 4 gunshots, how much time do you think that was?
I would say maybe a minute. It wasn't very long at all.
It was pretty fast, huh?
Yeah, it was pretty fast. I'd say around a minute.
Did you happen to notice when you were out in the backyard? Did you happen to notice any of your parents and neighbors or anybody else that was outside watching?
There were actually 4 people in front of me on the trail that were all watching everything go down.
Okay.
I don't know who they were or anything.
Matt? Trying to think if there's anything else. What's your parents' phone number in case we need to contact them for something?
505-977-0779. That's my mom's cell phone number. I don't remember my dad's off the top of my head.
Okay. Is there anything else you could think of that either I didn't ask you or you didn't tell me that might be important about this incident? Anything at all?
Most likely I covered everything in the paper and with you guys. The paramedics didn't look like they were in a rush. I don't think so. No, that's pretty much it.
Did you hear before the dog moved forward, did you hear officers or anybody, like, commands or anything?
No, I didn't hear it from where I was at.
Okay.
I could hear a little bit of what was being said on the radio, though, from the officers' cars that were in the parking lot.
Okay, what do you remember from that?
I just random stuff like tasers, knife, nothing really solid.
Okay. And you heard the dog barking at any point?
No, I didn't hear the dog barking until the flashlight went off.
Okay.
Anything else? Anything else you can think of?
No, that's pretty much it.
Okay. We'll go ahead and conclude the interview, and the time is 10:43.